In the next 60 minutes here on News Night, justice delivered. Supreme Court crashes bid to halt Chief Justice probe in a 4-1 majority decision, giving the Justice Puaman Committee the green light to proceed with its investigations. To bring you a blow-by-blow account of today's courtroom showdown, plus reaction from the plaintiff.
Well, they are spoken. I will go into conclave with my lawyers and we will advise ourselves appropriately.
Thousands of university students face potential disruption as non-teaching staff at Ghana's public universities declare an indefinite nationwide strike today, citing unmet demands and feeling pushed to the wall.
Until the government pays or honors the agreement signed on the 12th of November 2024. Go home!
Also tonight, Ghana Immigration Service faces human rights backlash over undocumented migrant crackdown in Accra.
Are they receiving the psychological support they need? Are they being fed well? Are they being sheltered well? These are the issues that Amnesty is interested in.
Tonight we hear from international human rights group Amnesty International and the Ghana Commission on Human Rights in Business.
Bank of Ghana rolls out comprehensive review of its monetary policy framework as the regulator takes fresh measures to firmly contain inflation.
And in sports, Tottenham Hotspur captain Son Heung-min benched as Amad Diallo starts for Manchester United as both clubs look to clinch the Europa League trophy.
We have details of all that for you from the walls of sports and business pretty shortly. Also tonight, disturbing discoveries as children with special needs shelters in Accra are left in the care of untrained workers. We hear from the Parliamentary Select Committee on Gender, Children and Special Protection. Share your thoughts with me here on News Night. 055-11-11997. Details after this. Live on News Night is on Joy 99.7 FM. Tonight, the Supreme Court has given the 5-member committee set up by President Mahama to investigate the petition filed against Chief Justice Torkonoo the all clear to continue with his work after 2 cases were filed challenging the constitutionality of the process were all dismissed. A civil society organization, Center for Citizenship, Constitutional and Electoral Systems, and one Theodore Atakwote, all sought to arrest the work of the committee and grind it to a halt, questioning the constitutionality of the prima facie determination reached by the President and the Council of State. Latif Idrisu was in court all day for us and joins us in the studio with more on this. Latif, first, what was the argument of the Center for Citizenship, Constitutional and Electoral Systems, and the first case held at the Supreme Court today?
Yeah, so Kabila is the founder of this civil society organization. The argument of Kabila's lawyer was asking the Supreme Court to nullify the procedure triggered by the petitioners and followed by the President to potentially remove the Chief Justice, with the argument that the President failed to give copies of the prima facie determination to the suspended Chief Justice. That was the thrust of his argument, that the President failed to give copies of the prima facie determination to the suspended Chief Justice. And so his failure to do that nullifies the entirety of the processes that have gone on till date. In this particular case, we had the Chief Justice as the second respondent and Justice Scott Puaman as the third respondent. Now, when the lawyer for the Chief Justice took the stage at the courtroom, that is lawyer Kwabna Edukusi, who represented the Chief Justice, his argument was a bit different from the argument of the plaintiff in this particular case. Lawyer Edukusi's argument was that as far as he is concerned, there has been no establishment of a prima facie, or there's been no prima facie determination by the President as far as the suspension of the Chief Justice is concerned. Now, his explanation is this, that if there were any prima facie determination, that prima facie determination would have found its way in the communication between the Executive Secretary of the President to the suspended Chief Justice, a communication in which he informed or he brought to the attention of the Chief Justice that she had been suspended because a prima facie determination had been made. He says the absence of the reasons based on which the president arrived at a prima facie determination, the absence of any reason whatsoever renders the entirety of the process and the establishment of the so-called prima facie arbitrary and unreasonable. So his argument was that the court should nullify that and determine that the entirety of the processes that have gone on since were to be rendered null and void, because again, as far as he is concerned, there is no prima facie determination. Now, this was in stark contrast of the argument of the lawyer for the plaintiff himself, because according to him, the president failed to furnish the suspended Chief Justice with a prima facie determination. Now, the lawyer for the Chief Justice comes in, and his argument was that as far as he is concerned, there's been no prima facie determination. This brought, an engagement between the panel of judges who were sitting on the matter and lawyer Kusi, because they sought to get the understanding whether indeed he was aligning himself and his argument with the argument of the plaintiff, or he's standing on his own. At the end of it all, he succeeded in aligning with the argument of the plaintiff, but that didn't save the day. At the end of the day, they came through with the determination and passed the judgment that by a majority 4-1 decision, the whole application is unmeritorious, and then it was dismissed.
I mean, the AG was represented. I wonder what his own arguments were on this matter.
Yeah, so the Deputy Attorney General, Dr. Justice Shamsai, represented the Attorney General. His argument was straightforward. He made the argument that as far as they are concerned, the president has not violated any aspect of the Constitution, and that he is acted in accordance with the dictates of the Constitution, and whoever is expected to be furnished with the prima facie determination had been furnished with, and so they have not violated any constitutional provision. He described the application as abuse of the court and frivolous. Those were his argument before the court, and the panel, after listening to both arguments, came through with the 4-1 majority decision.
There's been one loud question since this process started. Is the Chief Justice representing herself, or is somebody representing her? Today we got an answer to that. You mentioned lawyer Kusi.
Kwabena Edukusi.
Kwabena Edukusi.
Yeah.
So he is lawyer for the Chief Justice.
For the Chief Justice.
Was the Chief Justice there herself before, her former colleagues? Not former colleagues, her colleagues, because she's on suspension. Was she there herself?
She wasn't there, but her husband appeared on her behalf.
Okay.
So he was there. He sat at the back of the courtroom and watched the proceedings. After the judgment was delivered, he left, and we couldn't even get a word from him. If even we attempted to speak with him on this particular judgment.
And let's talk about the panel members and how they voted, if you like, because that is fascinating, considering that this is not the first time the court had to sit on a matter relating to the processes that may or may not lead to the removal of the Chief Justice. And many are reading meanings into who is voting where and aligning with which group and which, individual is saying what as far as the panel is concerned. Give us an insight into what happened today if you compare it to what happened previously.
Yeah, so this panel is a bit different. So on this panel, we had Justice Paul Bafuboni, who was presiding, or who presided. We have Justice Isifu Moro Tanko Amadu. We had Justice Yoni Kolendi. We had Justice Henry Anthony Kofi and Justice Yao Asare Dako. Now, Justice Yao Asare Dako is the one who dissented on the first case, and on the second case, which I'm sure we will come to, he was the one who dissented. So it was a majority 4-1 decision with Justice Yao Asare Dako dissenting.
Okay, let's talk about the second case, Theodore Atakorte.
Yeah.
What were the arguments?
So Theodore Atakorte's, and before we get there, you recall that the Ghana Bar Association at their mid-year conference came through with some communique. Part of it was a subtle threat to the president that they were going to go to the court because in their view,
it was actually not settled at all, because I remember on Newsnight, both on Newsnight and on PMS, I believe, speaking to the spokesperson for the GBA, which he said on these book shows, he said that they are considering taking legal action to get the Supreme Court to render an interpretation of some provisions in the Constitution relating to whether or not the president can proceed to suspend the Chief Justice when there are no regulations
to
guide the determination of prima facie.
Yeah. So today, someone has taken it to the appropriate forum, if you like. That's the Supreme Court.
So the Bar Association's point in the communique, which is that the president could not have acted in the absence of regulations. It was a subject of this particular process.
Exactly. Because, among other things, the plaintiff in this case asked the court to place an interlocutory injunction on the committee of inquiry constituted by the president to prove and potentially remove the Chief Justice, Torkonoo, from office. The plaintiff also asked the court to suspend the operationalization of the warrant of suspension issued by the president against the Chief Justice under Article 146(10)(a) of the 1992 Constitution. And the second relief, Evans, is what maybe, let me say, is similar to the concerns raised by the Ghana Bar Association. Yeah. So that was the thrust of the argument of the plaintiff in this particular case. Again, the Attorney General came through the Deputy Attorney General, Justice Swemsai, and said this is clearly an overstretch. The president has not violated any aspect of the Constitution, and wanted the courts to make a determination in their favor. Again, in a 4-1 majority decision, the court came through and dismissed the application, describing same as unmeritorious.
Okay, and what about the plaintiff himself? You managed to talk to him at all?
The plaintiff didn't show up in court at all.
But you had a quick reaction from the, I think, Kabila, who is a rep of that civil rights organization that had also filed a case.
Yeah, he made the point that he's going to go into conclave, and those were his words. He was going to go into conclave with his lawyers, and based on that, he will come through with a final decision on how to proceed as far as this particular judgment of the Supreme Court is concerned.
Well, they have spoken. I will go into conclave with my lawyers, and we will advise ourselves appropriately.
Okay, and let's talk about another case that has just been filed, still relating to the Chief Justice's removal process. And what are the reliefs here? First of all, it's between which parties?
So it's the suspended Chief Justice, Her Ladyship Justice Gertrude Araba Esaba Saki Torkonoo herself has gone to the Supreme Court. And what she's asking is for an order restraining the committee set up by President to inquire into the 3 petitions against the plaintiff. And the plaintiff here is the suspended Chief Justice, composed of the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, and then 6 defendants. So let me go back to the defendants in this case. We have 1, the Attorney General, that's the Office of the Attorney General and Ministry of Justice. 2, we have Justice Gabriel Scott Poamang, who is the chair of the committee set up by the president. We have Justice Samuel Kwame Adibu Asiedu. He is a justice of the Supreme Court. We have Daniel Yao Domelevo. We have Major Flora Bazwanura Dalugo. She's a member of the committee. We have Professor James Sefa Jisa. So she's lumped all of them together. Essentially, what the suspended Chief Justice is doing or seeks to do with this writ is to hold the committee or stop the committee from doing its work. Essentially, that's what she's asking the Supreme Court to rule in her favor. This was just filed just some few minutes ago at the Supreme Court.
And I found the thing interesting that in this case, it appears the Chief Justice will be represented by the former Attorney General.
By the former Attorney General, Godfrey Adame. Yes.
Okay. So this is the first time the Chief Justice herself, and this is what is fascinating about this. The Chief Justice is currently suspended. She's now going to go before her colleagues.
Yeah.
And she was the boss until very recently. All of them served
until the suspension.
Yeah. All of them served at her pleasure. She sort of put them on panels, etc. Now she's gone before them,
yes,
asking them to consider her own pleas and make a determination on the subject. And then she's not only going there now with the lawyer who we're now learning about, she's going there and she's going to be represented by the former Attorney General, who was before her many times.
Yes.
I remember, in that very controversial circumstances. So really, this is setting up to be a very, very interesting case indeed.
Yeah, and Evans, let me go to the second relief. That she wants an order restraining the second and the third defendants. Let me go to the second and third, then I'll come and continue. The second is Justice Gabriel Scott Poamang. The third is Justice Samuel Kwame Adibwa Siedu. So I'm taking that relief again. An order restraining the second and third defendants, respondents, from presiding over or participating in proceedings of the committee appointed by the president to inquire into 3 petitions purportedly presented for the removal of the plaintiff as Chief Justice of the Republic until the hearing and final determination of the instant action.
Okay. Thank you very much, Lateef. I want to bring in the former director of the Ghana School of Law and lecturer at Mancrest University, Koko Ansasari, joins us on the line right now. I'm grateful that you could join me. This is a very, very fascinating set of events, if you may, all playing out before the court. And today, we're now just learning that Chief Justice herself have taken up a case before the Supreme Court. First of all, give me your reaction to all this.
Evans, thank you very much. Good evening. Evans, this is a very worrying, unfolding story that the Chief Justice will seek to stop a constitutional process. Now, any application to stop the process will itself be unconstitutional. The law is that when a petition involves the Chief Justice, it is the President and the President alone who may initiate the CJ removal process pursuant to a petition to that effect. And once the President receives a petition for the removal of the Chief Justice, there is a process outlined in the Constitution from Article 146, Clause 1 to the end. And the President has followed the provision in accordance with the letter and spirit of Article 146. The President has not violated any of the chronological stages in the process. Therefore, it will be a very difficult task for anyone to seek to halt the process. It will simply not bite. So what the lawyers are doing at the moment, and what the Chief Justice herself has done, is to back, but cannot bite. You see, they are merely backing. Now, if the former Attorney General is the Chief Justice's lawyer, the whole thing is now turning into politics.
Forgive me, I lost you there briefly.
That is the NDC.
I lost you there briefly. You were giving me your assessment of the representation she now has in the passing of the
the former Attorney General, who had the most say, apart from the President, in the appointment of Torkonoo as the Chief Justice, will now seek to defend her. It's like he is trying to defend what he did, his own action. It changes the architecture of the entire CJ removal process that we have witnessed so far.
In what way? In what way exactly does it change the architecture?
Yeah, in the sense that one of the persons who had a hand in the appointment of the Chief Justice is now, bringing an action to sustain the action that he and the former president took. Is a wrong move. Number two, yes, it's a wrong move in the sense that, if the appointment of the Chief Justice then was severely criticized as having been wrongly managed, and I was one of the persons who shouted loudest that the way a manner that Torkonoo was appointed over and above her seniors was wrong, and that it would send wrong signals. And I remember saying that I hoped then that Torkonoo would be the first and last junior justice of the Supreme Court to be catapulted onto the seat of the Chief Justice. I said so. And I also predicted that if the NPP lost power, she will be removed merely because she was taken out of 10. But at the same time, I was quick also, to caution the Mahama administration that if we're, in the shoes of Mahama, I will have nothing to do with the petition by Professor Kwekwaza, seeking the removal of the Chief Justice, because again, to be interpreted, as coming out of a mere vendetta, that is the fact that she was appointed by Kufuor to be, the yardstick to remove her. I said so. Now, when I made those observations, I was not contradicting myself at all. What I said is what we are witnessing today. If she had not been appointed, and Paul Bafuboni, who was the most senior justice at the time, had been appointed, will not go through this rigmarole at all. The fact that she was taken out of 10 is what some of us feel that Mahama will want to right the wrong of the injustice that have been perpetrated by Nana Kufuor, the government. But having said that, I shudder to think why the Chief Justice, who is the head of the judiciary, would want to halt the constitutional process the president has initiated, because the Constitution constitutionally enjoins the president to do what he is doing.
Yeah, you made that point earlier, and thankfully, Godfred Yeboadame joins us now on the line. He's a former Attorney General, and he joins us now. Godfred, Ancestor is asking that question, that this is a constitutional process, and he's curious why the Chief Justice would want to set that aside.
Oh, first of all, thank you very much, Evans, and good evening to our listeners. I was trying to speak on this matter, but I was compelled to do so. The very misleading comments that had made by Mr. Ansari, as usual. I mean, in his characteristic fashion, he misrepresented a lot of facts and a lot of dust into the eyes of the public. And I think it's appropriate that I went on record to correct some of the statement that he made. How can he say that it was a case of Justice Torkonoo taken out of 10 and made Chief Justice? I mean, never in the history of this country has it been a requirement that the person who is the most senior at the bar or the most senior in the judicial architecture is the one made Chief Justice. There have been many instances of appointments of Chief Justice which necessarily have not been in terms of the most senior either at the bar or the most senior on the court. Now, presently, the number of justices who have been nominated by President Mahama, 7 of them, about 5 or 6 of them have been taken out of 10. Most of them are actually taken out of 10. It's not the most senior who have been recommended. I know many people, with all respect, that President Kufuor appointed only a year or 2 ago, who are now being nominated by President Mahama to the Supreme Court. I know many that President Kufuor appointed about 3 or 4 years ago, who are now being jumped over their colleagues and being nominated by President Mahama to the Supreme Court. So all these arguments are totally false and misleading to start with. Now, secondly, he made the point that it is wrong for the former Attorney General, to represent the Chief Justice. With the greatest respect, if there is any group of people to have politicized this process. It is the NDC government. Look at the band of lawyers representing the petitioners. Mr. Tashishikata, Mr. Tadosori, a lawyer who has gone on record of representing all NDC figures the past 8 years and who very much associated with the NDC. Oliver Bakavomo, a young man who recently rose to popularity on account of all kinds of attacks against the NPP government and who very much has been associated with the NDC, worked with President Mahama in his office and all that. These are people who are prosecuting the Chief Justice. And I think that it's about time that good men in this country stood for what is righteous and what is right. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, if there's any Attorney General who, right from his appointment, has stood up for the judiciary and has spoken against attacks on the independence of the judiciary, it is myself.
But Godfred, you admit, though, that the fact that you represent the Chief Justice now, in the same vein as you point out to Chachushikata and his relationship with the NDC, also, in many people's eyes, as far as the optics is concerned, almost then aligns the Chief Justice with the MPP.
Pardon?
I'm saying that the fact that you admit, though, that the fact that you now represent the Chief Justice, as far as the optics are concerned, the same way you cite Chachuchika.
Which optics? I'm citing the fact that it's a matter of principle.
I haven't finished my question. That it, in many people's eyes, it immediately aligns the Chief Justice with the MPP.
It is totally erroneous and must be corrected. It is about time that the proper thing is stood for in this country. And we cannot let people mislead the public and then let it go uncorrected. And I'm making the point that indeed the action I've taken is consistent with all actions I've taken right from the first day I was even appointed as Attorney General. I remember my inaugural speech at the Ghana Bar Association in 2021, Bogatanga. A very significant part of it was devoted to protection of the independence of the judiciary and to ensure that attacks on the independence of the judiciary, as we are witnessing now, do not occur. So indeed, what I'm doing now is very much in tune and consistent with all I've stood for.
I mean, so Godfred,
all my life. The point I'm making is that indeed it is not about just Torkonoo.
Yeah, no, but you're saying
it is not about just Torkonoo at all. It is about ensuring that this unwarranted attack on the independence of the judiciary is fought off.
Yeah, I mean,
I construe all that has been happening as a very calculated effort on the part of the NDC government to attack the independence of the judiciary and shape it in the manner that they desire.
Yeah, but
and indeed, if you look at the beliefs that we...
Godfred, you are an officer of the court. You say this is an attack on the judiciary. This is a constitutional process, that the Chief Justice is currently having to contend with. This is purely constitutional. Is it
the process has been riddled with a lot of unconstitutionality. The process has been laden with grave violations of the Constitution each step of the way. In the first place, even the President's consultation with the Chief Justice, when he had not notified the Chief Justice of receipt of the petitions, was even unconstitutional. It is part of the relief we are seeking. Secondly, the manner in which the so-called prima facie determination was made was also unconstitutional. It's an affront to the Constitution. Every citizen of this country is entitled to a fair trial. This process clearly it violates every tenet of a fair trial. How can it be told the Chief Justice that yes, a prima facie case has been made against you, and that is it? There's no reason given. There's no specification of which of the allegations a prima facie determination has made, which of them prima facie determination was not made, the reasoning for it, the basis, and what have you. And these are basic rights that every citizen of the country ought to enjoy. So how can such a right be denied a person as significant as the Chief Justice of the Republic? And indeed, it was denied, as I said, because they want to clearly violate a right and railroad the process and interfere with the independence of the judiciary.
I mean,
so indeed, the manner in which the prima facie determination was made also constitutes a part of the relief that we are seeking.
Yeah, I mean, and fundamentally, that question will keep coming back. You've said you're representing the Chief Justice only because you believe you must defend the independence of the judiciary. So you're doing this out of the abundance of a big heart, not because you have a political interest in this matter.
Absolutely. And I mean, to be honest with you, Evans, I got very much offended, and indeed I deplored in serious terms when I saw the representation of the petitioners in the matters. Petitioners represented by Sadio Sori, Chachichikata, and Bakavomo, heavily or dying the NDC people, and who have all along been attacking the Chief Justice. Every week before this disclosure was made, they were on radio, on internet, writing all kinds of articles and all against the Chief Justice and encouraging the process to roll on. Was it an attempt to throw dust into our eyes?
I mean, but Godfrey, you cannot accuse Chachu and others of doing a political, pursuing a political interest with their representation of the petitioners. And yet, in your case, it isn't politics, but it's out of the abundance of a good heart.
Yes, and I'm saying that indeed the country ought to consider it as a pure constitutional matter. If you look at the reliefs that we are seeking, they are purely constitutional. They are premised on the denial of the Chief Justice of a right to a fair trial. I think that it is improper, and indeed any citizen. I've gone on record as representing various dismissed workers and all. Not from recently, as far back as 2009 and all that. Civil servants who are unlawfully selected by the John Mills and Mahama administration. Way back 2009. If you look at my record, I defended civil servants who had been unlawfully interdicted. So what I'm doing is clearly concerned with my history, and I'm saying that this whole process is unconstitutional. There must be a careful look at it, and the nation, the democratic credentials of the nation, are clearly endangered by a continuation of the process.
I mean,
how can persons, with all respect, I mean, Justice Paman is one person that I respect a lot. He was actually chairman of the the Law Reform Commission Board when I was Attorney General. So I've had very good relations with him. There's nothing personal, and indeed we have very good relations anytime we meet and all that. But how can it be that Justice Paman will give 4 judgments in favor of one of the petitioners in the matter and be appointed as the chairman of this committee? And it is not only one matter. Apparently, it is actually two of the petitioners. He also sat on all of the cases involving the police officer, who is also a petitioner in this matter. So clearly, the whole process is really all kinds of unconstitutionality and leading with people who are afflicted by conflict of interest.
But Godfrey, I have a curiosity. Today, when the other case was called, the Chief Justice was represented by another lawyer. So how come you get to represent her in this matter? How did this happen? Did she reach out to you and procuring your services, or you offered to her pro bono?
So this development clearly tells you that the Chief Justice is exercising her right to counsel. The Chief Justice has a right to counsel on every occasion and in respect of every matter. So she called you to appoint counsel for each case, and it cannot be that because she's Chief Justice, she's divested of that right.
No, I mean, I'm just curious. So she called you?
So you want me to disclose lawyer-client confidentiality?
No, that's not lawyer.
A lawyer with all respect over 22 years at the bar. You want me to disclose you when I met my client and what have you?
That is not lawyer-client.
I think the most
it's not lawyer-client confidentiality. So did she reach out to you?
Is that the most important point here, with all respect, is that there's an issue of grave unconstitutionality, which borders on an interference in the independence of Ghana's judiciary. The whole nation, the whole international community, and whatever you should be concerned about how Ghana, a nation with strong democratic credentials, all of a sudden stand the risk of having those credentials eroded on account of an unbridled desire to remove the Chief Justice unlawfully from office.
Yeah, I mean, Godfrey, you make that point earlier, but I'm so curious because of what we saw in court today, that she came, she was represented by another lawyer. In this case, did she reach out to you?
I mean, that is their right. I'm saying that's their right to employ lawyers for any case that she's involved in.
Yeah, but
why?
In the court of law. But why?
I'm not about to question why the Chief Justice employed a different lawyer for a case in court today and engaged me for another case that she filed on the same day. I cannot prove that at all.
So why Godfrey Dame, the former Attorney General, who definitely was the President's chief legal advisor at the time when the President nominated her, you definitely would have been consulted in the matter.
I am saying that everything I am doing in this country now is very much consistent with all I have done all my life, as well as all that I did in the course of my tenure as Attorney General. And indeed, if you take a careful look at all my speeches since I was made Attorney General on 1st March 2021. There was never any occasion on which I made a major public speech without addressing the question of the independence of the judiciary.
Yeah, but,
so it's a matter that is very dear to me.
But in the case of the Chief Justice, it's slightly different, is it not? The Nana Akufo-Addo nominated her. I believe it will be fair to assume that in doing so, you would have had a hand, or you may have been consulted in her nomination. And now she is a subject of a legal constitutional process that may lead to her removal. And you now become the lawyer for her. Clearly that's the point that Ansasari is making, that you have an interest. And that is why you've jumped to her defense. You're doing this because she was an appointee nominated by a man who appointed you yourself. And this is you now protecting your interest at the Supreme Court.
Which interest am I protecting in this matter? The persons who are protecting their interest in this matter, we all know. The president and all the members. I mean, if there's a clear case of conflict of interest, I would think that it's been pointed out on arrest of summons. The fact that the person who has given judgment in respect of two of the petitioners now all of a sudden finds himself adjudicating as the chairman of a committee that has been set up to probe the Chief Justice. That is the clear case of conflict of interest, and not the fact that the former Attorney General is relevant to the Chief Justice. I think these are the matters of grave that should be of grave concern to the nation. Was the President unaware that this development had occurred before he was setting up his committee? And if these matters have been brought to his attention, I think you ought to ask the Attorney General what he's doing about them. And not me. I'm not the Attorney General now.
Okay. And sorry, he has a fair point there, that, that as far as the points you made, the precedent shows that you don't need to be the most senior on the bench to become the Chief Justice, and that this is not him doing a political job. He's simply defending the interest of the judiciary when it comes to its independence.
Yes. You see, at a glance, that position, may be taken and supported at a glance, carefully. But the Constitution in Article 146(4) says that before a substantive office holder is appointed, the person the President shall consider is the one who is the most senior of the justices of the Supreme Court. So that, reading deep meaning into that provision, it stands to reason that if the operators of the Constitution were minded to do the right thing, it is the most senior justice of the Supreme Court who shall always be appointed to fill the vacancy whenever it does occur. Now, just to throw a little more light on what my good friend Godfrey Dami said is leading the public. Now, at the time her leadership, Torkonoo, was elevated to the citadel of the Chief Justice. The outgoing Chief Justice was Eni Yeboah, and immediately beneath Eni Yeboah was Paul Bafuboni, followed by Sule Badigbe, then Vida Akuto Bamfo, who was to retire in February 2019, then Anthony Afrebeni, Yapel, Gabriel Poama, in that order, and then blah 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 to Aubrey Lovely Johnson before Gertrude Torkonoo. So there were as many as 12 in front of her. And if I say that she was taken out of 10, that's what I meant. That she wasn't, the most senior justice of the Supreme Court at the time that Eni Yeboah was to retire, and at the time that Godfrey Dami and former President Akufo-Addo considered Gertrude Torkonoo's position as chief, considered Gertrude Torkonoo for the position that is, no one can quarrel with that.
Okay.
He was not amongst, the first four.
Okay. Krikwansa, sorry, thank you very much. Godfrey Debadem, I'm grateful both of you for joining us on this. And make of that what you will. Send me a WhatsApp of your thoughts on the 05511119997. George, you have business.
Evans, the Commonwealth Bank of Ghana commences comprehensive review of its monetary policy framework as the regulator takes fresh measures to firmly contain inflation. And economist Professor John Gachi and Dr. John Kwache and two others joined the Bank of Ghana as advisors to the governor of the Bank of Ghana. The business news on Newsnight is brought to you by MTN Business. Welcome to the new world of business. Kingdom Books and Stationery, your number one stop shop for all your office essentials, Sinter's tanks and Pepsodent, Herbal and Charcoal. Welcome back to Business on Newsnight. Now, the Bank of Ghana has announced that it has commenced a comprehensive review of its monetary policy framework. The move is part of measures by the central bank to contain inflation and any threat to the outlook. There is more in this report.
Speaking at the opening of the Monetary Policy Committee meeting of the Bank of Ghana, Governor Dr. Johnson Isiama noted these new measures enhance policy transition and allow greater room for credit expansion to the private sector.
This is intended to enhance policy transmission, intended to improve liquidity management, and it is intended to allow greater room for credit expansion to the private sector.
On concerns about inflation rate going up, Dr. Johnson Isiama noted the development shows that the central bank would have to do more to ensure that current gains are not eroded.
In March, the committee responded decisively to inflation outlook by raising the policy rate by 100 basis points to 28%. Preliminary evidence right now suggests this action has contributed to dampening inflation momentum. And importantly, the cedi has appreciated sharply by nearly 19% between April and May, helping to ease imported inflation pressures and restoring public confidence.
The governor was also worried about the external threat to the country's inflation going forward, despite current optimism.
The inflation outlook, while improving, remains vulnerable to second-round effects. Food supply constraints are still with us, especially from northern Ghana and the Sahel, and external price shocks, particularly given volatile global commodity markets. There are also geopolitical tensions and evolving global trade dynamics, including the recent US-led tariff disputes. These have heightened market uncertainty and could affect commodity prices, could affect exchange rates, and could affect financial flows in emerging markets like ours.
Dr. Johnson Isiama assured the business community that there's no need to panic, insisting current measures being instituted will ensure that things does not get out of hand.
And that is a business desk report. Meanwhile, economist Dr. John Gachi and former director at the Institute of Economic Affairs, Dr. John Kwache, have all been appointed as advisors to the governor of the Bank of Ghana. They are among three other individuals that have been named to support policy-making decisions at the Bank of Ghana. Dr. Johnson Isiama gave details of this appointment during a meeting at the Bank of Ghana today.
Three of them are advisors. The staff are already aware of them. Dr. Kwachi is seated on my left. Please wave to the media so they get to know you. He's not here for IEA. He's here for the bank. He's now an advisor with us, substantive member, part of the family. We also have Professor Gachi, John Gachi, who is a well-known figure. Professor Gachi is one of our advisors. He's here on a mission, and his mission is to help us introduce some other innovation which has to do with non-interest banking. He's going to advise us on how to implement that.
And that was the governor of the Bank of Ghana, Dr. Johnson Isiama. Others on the board include a former head of banking supervision at the Bank of Ghana, Mr. Franklin Belnye, and also Ghana's rep, a former Ghana's rep to the IMF as well, Dr. Kuma. To other stories, the board chairman of MTN Ghana, Ishmael Yamson, has given the firm assurance to shareholders that they will not lose any value or income. Now, this follows the company's planned restructuring of its mobile money business, that is, Mobile Money Limited, in compliance with the Ghana Payment Systems and Services Act. Speaking at the extraordinary general meeting in Accra today, Mr. Yamson explained that these processes to investors that transferring these shares will not result in anyone losing his or her money. To other stories, the Venture Capital Trust Fund is stepping up efforts for local businesses as part of its renewed push to reduce unemployment in Ghana. Speaking at a media briefing on its 20th anniversary, Chief Executive Michael Abbey said that the fund is focused on helping promising small businesses to grow in the country.
We are looking at also establishing the 24-hour economy SME equity fund. And this is also to support businesses that would want to scale, operate 24/7 within the 24-hour economy program. Of course.
And of course, you heard the chief executive of the Venture Capital Trust Fund, Michael Abbey. And that's all for business on Newsnight. Let's do sports.
Yes, a very quick one as far as the Europa final is concerned. We're just some 4 minutes away to kick off, 3 minutes to be precise. And just a quick look at the lineup for Tottenham Hotspur. Vicario is in post for them. Poro, Romero, Van de Ven, Udogi, Benteke, Bissouma, Sarr, Johnson, Solanke, Richarlison. And for Manchester United, we've got Andre Onana, Euro, Maguire, Luke Shaw, Mazraoui, Casemiro, Fernandes, Dogo, Diallo, and Mason Mount and Højlund in the starting lineup for Manchester United. Remember, at stake tonight is the Europa League trophy and, of course, a place in the Champions League final. So, 90 minutes to see who will get to pick it.
We are picking it. But thank you very much. Still live on Newsnight. It's on Joy 99.7 FM. And I'll be sharing your thoughts with the rest of the world pretty shortly. 055-1111-997. And already I have a few of your messages here with me. And this one says, for me, I'm happy that the two Supreme Court justices who are part of the committee investigating the Chief Justice seen hanging out with adversary, he says, are they not aware that by this conduct there is a likelihood bias? And this one says, what's Dami talking about? He should give us a break. Thaddeus Chachua willing to take lessons on ethics, but not from him. Please ask Godfrey Dami how about Ms. Charlotte says removal. You have this one says the man thinks we are kids in this country. Everybody knows that it is a political interest. It is his political interest and how biased he can be. Give us a break and stop throwing dust into our eyes. Now, with the rings beginning, the National Disaster Management Organization, NADMO, is shifting focus from relief to readiness by training emergency respondents, health workers, and local leaders to act before disaster strikes. Now, JoyNews' Mohammed Nuruddin reports on the actionable steps being taken to protect the lives and properties of Ghanaians while reducing the total floods in 2025.
This year, the National Disaster Management Organization, NADMO, says it is taking no chances. As the rains begin, the message is clear. Prevention pays. Charlotte Norman is the Director for Climate Change Adaptation and Disaster Risk Reduction at NADMO.
Simulations bring these out. Sometimes, if you're not doing a simulation and the real issue happens, you would think that you know what to do, but then everybody is there, the stakeholders are all there, and you don't know who to take what action.
In 2024 alone, Kwabere East recorded 17 disaster cases,
comprising of fire disasters, commercial disasters, and collapsing of buildings and what have you.
For Charlotte Norman and her team, it is about making sure every actor knows their role before the first drop of rain.
In the end, the districts as a community should be able to reduce the negative impacts of flood hazards.
A report by Mohammed Nuruddin.
Climate Focus is brought to you by JoyNews in partnership with Youth Bridge Foundation, bridging gaps for positive youth development, and the Climate Development Knowledge Network.
And that's it for Newsnight. Tonight is Stronger Sasi up next. And Enimwa is here to tell us what to expect, Enimwa.
How are you doing?
I'm okay, you?
I'm good. Staying safe in the rains. Okay. Well, tonight we're continuing our conversation from last week where we were discussing toxic workplaces. And you know us, today we're going to tell you some real stories and answer all of the questions that were sent in last week, about the reporting process, the healing process, the quitting process, the suing process even, maybe. So you definitely want to stay tuned in for that.
I like your guess. I like your guess a lot.
Yes, my guests have a lot of fans. So, but they were amazing last week, very, very insightful and very informative.
I see my good friend Israeli's wife there, Louisa.
Yes, Louisa is on. If you listened last week, I just love her, There's something about us women. A lot of times we lead with our emotions, but Louisa kind of puts us back on track, about leading with logic and thinking, getting your facts straight, presenting your case with evidence and with facts. So that was amazing. We also have Dr. Evelyn Owusu-Roberts. She was handling and will be handling the psychology side of it, getting us mentally prepared for the battle. And today we'll actually be talking about mental health in the workplace as well. So we have her for that. And then we have Ethel. She'll be sharing her story of how she moved from corporate to entrepreneurship. Yeah, so
packed. Stay tuned.
Definitely.